today's World Insight with Tian Wei, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier in China. Do Germany and China make natural partners in defending the multilateral system? And a new direction for Germany. Who will the ruling CDU party pick as Merkel's successor? Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you on CGTN in Beijing. At the invitation of Chinese President Xi Jinping, Germany President Frank-Walter Steinmeier pays his first state visit to China, which lasts from December the 5th to the 10th. During his trip, Steinmeier will exchange views with President Xi and Premier Keqiang on bilateral ties, China-EU relations, and major international issues of common concern. Before our discussion, take a look.
German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier's six-day state visit begins in southeast China's Guangdong province before moving to southwest China's Sichuan province and Beijing, where he will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping and Premier Keqiang. During his trip to Guangdong, Mr. Steinmeier spoke highly of the remarkable achievements of China's reform and opening up, and he said Germany was willing to promote deeper cooperation in sectors such as the economy, technology, and culture. The Chinese Foreign Ministry said China hoped the visit would tighten political ties and raise the country's strategic mutual trust. Relations between China and Germany have been on a high momentum this year. Earlier this month, on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, President Xi met with German Chancellor Angela Merkel. In July, Premier Keqiang and Ms. Merkel co-chaired the intergovernmental consultations in Berlin. And in May, the German Chancellor visited China and attended the symposium of the China-Germany Economic Advisory Committee with Premier Li. The two countries established an all-dimensional strategic partnership in 2014. China has become Germany's largest trading partner for 2 consecutive years. Trade volume between both sides accounts for about 30% of the total volume between China and Europe, and there is still room for cooperation between the two countries despite current global challenges.
For more on China-German ties, we are joined in our Beijing studio Cui Hongjian, who is the head of the European Studies Department at the China Institute of International Relations. Also in Beijing studio, Frank Sierin, best-selling author, journalist, and filmmaker from Germany, of course. Welcome to the both of you, gentlemen. I want to start with you. The president's visit, his first time as president. But he certainly has been here 15 years ago when he was serving the administration then. How should we understand the significance of this visit for him, given the fact that he knows China somewhat?
Yeah, he has quite a lot of experience with China. He, as a foreign minister, for example, he was working very close together with the Chinese foreign minister to convince Obama to get off the sanctions in Iran. So there are a lot of elaborate channels. So I think he can talk very openly and very clearly about the problems and the perspective between the Chinese-German relations.
I see. Mr. Cui, of course, this is coming with a big backdrop. First of all, G20 wrap up with a joint declaration. Certainly, countries, including China, Germany, signed on it, have some of the common grounds being lined up. Secondly, you see China-U.S. trade war having a suspense, at least for now. We don't know 3 months from now what's going to happen. Thirdly, you do see that Germany and the United States are also in a somewhat tense relationship, particularly when it comes to trade, car, for example. So how should we understand all this mixture of information with the big backdrop?
Yes, exactly. If we look at this visit by a German president in China, we can find out maybe more actually significance from its background. As we know, both China and Germany, we share a very similar position in world trade. Both two countries, we export a lot, and also both China and Germany, we win so many surplus in trade. So indeed, both China and Germany would be a target for any kind of protectionism. So we share the same position. So I hope that not only this visit by President Steinmeier, and also this more cooperation between China and Germany, we will try to release a very strong message to the international community.
Besides the consensus about trade and being the so-called victim of protectionist measures coming from some of the world's biggest economies, how can, though, China and Germany be able to work together on these issues? That's a big question mark, because the whole discussion could take quite a long time, and you cannot have a very quick fix for now. And if you talk about other multilateral platforms, yes, they are helpful, but they're not necessarily going to decide the direction of discussion. So,
but there are opportunities. Germany will be, the next 2 years, will be non-permanent member in the Security Council. China is a member of the Security Council. I think this could be a quite interesting platform to find common ideas, to find out what Germany and China can do together to shape the world in a better way.
Some say Donald Trump and the current administration in the United States picking up this trade war with China. Not many around the world would like that. However, others say maybe they can also sail with the Trump administration in terms of some of the issues they want to figure out with China. I wonder whether Germany is holding that position.
Basically, Germany is kind of in between. It's very difficult because we share a lot of common values with the United States, but we are kind of drifting apart, and suddenly we have common interests with China, more and more common interests with China in the climate issue, on the trade, but also technology-wise. So, but for the Germans it's very difficult, but because they kind of linked to America, still linked to America, but they are more and more linked to China, and they have to decide from day to day, from step to step, what to do.
That's very interesting, Mr. Cui, because China also has to decide what to do every day, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, China is not the past China, like a developing country, totally, because a part of it is quite developed. But it's not the future China yet, because it's not a developed economy, and its system is somewhat different from some of the others, for example, that of Germany. So it seems that China is also at the crossroad, has to decide on a constant basis as to what to do and how to handle the waves of challenges.
Yes, sure. Firstly, because I just finished my academic visit in Germany, so I can have a very deep impression about how it is very conflicting feeling from Germany on China, and also how about the hesitant from Germany try to have some close cooperation, share some more common ground with China.
Come from?
I think that firstly, yes, Germany still, I mean, takes a very big advantage of the cooperation with China, because we do have a, so big common interests.
Trade,
in the last 2 or 3 years, China already the biggest trade partner with Germany. But at the same time, just like my German friends mentioned that on some issues, German side share the same stand with the United States. For example, try to push China forward some more reforms on the so-called IPR or some other issues. So I think, yes, you are right to say that I think it will give some more maybe new dynamic for China.
Let's talk about some of the areas that both of you mentioned. I mean, if you look at specific issues, it could be very interesting crystallization of the position where we are. Cars. That's an interesting example, isn't it? Donald Trump threatened 25% tariffs against the German cars, I mean, foreign cars coming into the U.S. market. Of course, earlier Tuesday, we heard Daimler Chrysler, together with some of the other Volkswagen and some of the others, went into the White House, but we didn't hear any result of that discussion. But the question is, that tariff is not being threatened, at least on January the 1st, and yet we do not know when that knife will fall. That's what the car makers are thinking. So will that be able to make Germany and China more in an empathy toward one another? And therefore, what can be done?
In one way, yes, because they need to stick together. They want to trade cars. In another way, no, because there are new cars coming, autonomous driving, then we're talking about data. We have completely different perspective of data protection,
yes.
So we need to sit down to listen to each other.
And the cars could also be competitive with one another in the other markets
yes,
as well.
The cars becoming more and more competitive. In the years before, the Chinese cars were not really competitive. This is changing now dramatically. So, but still we need to sit together and find a way how we can work together. But that's more difficult than it was before, because, for example, the German car industry is more challenged. And so, in one way, we Germans, we are afraid of the Chinese car industry. In other ways, the Chinese car industry is an ally fighting against tariffs, keeping
the markets open.
The markets open.
Exactly.
And so things becoming more complicated. So we need to spend more time in understanding each other. The Germans need to listen to the Chinese to understand why they're doing things.
You don't think they do?
And
you don't think they do?
Not enough. And
not
the other
enough.
way around. And the other way around, China needs to listen to the Germans. Why do they have this kind of mentality of data protection? What is their history?
Right.
What are their bad experience? And if you understand each other, then it's easier to find a way to work together.
Right, but Mr. Cui, you know, with the Huawei issue going on right now, many wonder from China whether those that are our potential partners can be reliable when it comes to critical issues. For example, about the credibility of cooperation. British Telecom, for example, the BT has to quit Huawei. According to them, it is a result of the so-called Five Eyes scheme they had with the United States. So we put aside the specific of the case, but just the general idea and the logic behind it. So when China is looking at partners, such as Germany, is China looking at them thinking, are they going to be reliable when pressure is being put on them, let's just say from Washington? After all, it's not their interest, it's China's interest. It's the interest of cooperation.
Yes, I think now it's a very important time for China, and also not only for China. I think it's the same issue for Germany to look for some more reliable partners. I think indeed for Germany and some European countries, I think they suffered a lot because of the some change of the alliance between Europe and the United States.
We'll ask our German friend about that, whether the change has really happened with the alliance.
Even on the issue of the Huawei and the G5 you mentioned. And so far I think that Germany is one of the more reliable partner with China, because in Germany we also heard some discussion about it. I think it's so far in general the mainstream in Germany is trying to open to this Huawei on this technology and this standard. But of course, I think at the same time, for China, I agree with my German friend. We need to have some more mutual communication. We need to have some more mutual understanding.
Right.
It's a very, very critical time to improve our mutual trust.
Hearing is not listening. There's a huge difference over there about that.
And it's more complicated. I think it's too simple to ask from the Chinese side to ask, are they reliable or not? It's more complicated. There are traditions. There was there's a tradition of Western alliance.
Yeah.
The Americans helped
of course,
to free Europe.
Everybody knows that part of the history, but the question is when they come to business deals.
Yes, but
this is not about alliance.
But you can't separate it. Yeah. You can't separate it. So therefore, you need more understanding that we Germans, we probably would like to work closer with China, but we have certain obligations, not only
and history,
and then
and personal feelings as well.
Yes, and we have different ways of running our countries, so it's not so easy. It's not like, are you on my side or not?
Right. It's not about whether you are on my side or not. It's about business deals. Whether when you have a business deal, you're going to carry out the business deal because there's a lot of credibility at stake. Having said that, though, that's only two issues that we just mentioned. However, there's already a lot of complexity in it. So when the president is coming to China, certainly this is happening with the earlier visits between the two countries, top of the leadership, quite frequently these days, I have to say. So what can really be achieved? I mean, we're at a critical time. Only listening to one another is not enough.
You can build up trust. I think that's very important. And our president is known in China for a very long time. He knows the people he is talking to, so he can build up trust. He can explain why Germany is hesitating. He can explain why German car industry is worried about China as well, because they're becoming competitors. That's not easy. The world is changing. Before there was one world power, and it was clear.
So what's going to be the choice for Germany? I mean, we can just keep on listening to one another about each other's responsibilities, shouldering of the past and uncertain about the future. But there has to be solutions.
Yes.
So if we're talking about a solution and result-oriented relationship, what is that going to be like?
For example, one big worry of the German industry is that the Chinese market is still partly closed. So the reaction in Germany is that they start to closing it as well. That's probably not a good idea. So if there would be signs from China that they're constantly opening up, so that the German industry has a chance to participate, that would be a way things would become better and easier for both sides.
Yeah.
I understand the concern from German side. But I need to remind our German friends that yes, China has a rich of experience for the opening up and reform in the last 40 years. But I think that now it would be a new stage for the opening up and reform for China, because now China has some more capability and China has some more experience. So I don't think that China will just follow the original steps to do something. Maybe in a new stage, China will have its reform and opening up, maybe in its own more, commitment and more, how to say, active. So I think that will be a big change.
Mr. Cui has been very diplomatic in the way he put it. He's just trying to say that China is not the China that is trying to make the shirt, thousands and millions of them every day. It's a different stage of China's development. China has its own technologies. China's industry has become somewhat stronger than it used to be. And China has this more sophisticated domestic market as well. So how this will tie up to China's next plan of its opening up and reform, and what would be others' role if they want to have a role in this change, that is really up to the German to decide in a way at this critical juncture. Mr. Siren.
Yeah, but the problem is if you don't have full access, then it's very difficult to decide. I think no one really wants that China is going to stay.
For example, if the U.S. put on 25% tariff on the German cars, will German companies still looking at the U.S. market? That's the decision that the German companies have to decide.
They just went there to discuss and negotiate.
Exactly. So that is a question facing every country, every industry. So you can't say you open up the market and then I decide, but rather it's an interaction with one another.
It's easier to decide if the market is more open, because then it's easier to interact. And what I'm worried is that the market is not getting more and more open in China, so the Europeans, they close their market as well, and then we will have a situation.
Mr. Siren, if I could remind you of some of the latest measures taken by the Chinese side. There's a whole list of them. I don't know whether our international investors are reading them efficiently and sufficiently just over the past few months or not.
And these are good signs, but this has to continue.
But what about credibility side from the German? Let's just say if there is agreement about trade, about access toward one another's markets, will Germany be a reliable partner?
I think the Germans are well known in China as reliable, as far as I know. You can judge better than me.
Okay.
But,
so it will be one during this critical juncture.
I think yes, I think Germans are quite reliable, but still, they are between the chairs.
Let's talk
That's
about
very
some of the differences.
Yeah.
Since you keep on talking about the differences, it's important to know them. For example, about technology. Data protection, there is a different understanding of data protection. For example, in China, mobile pay works very well. But we see there is a hesitance or a slow process in some of developed economies. Some contributed to the already very well-developed banking system. Others know that the credit card system and credit system has been working very well for decades in those cultures. So China, of course, is a newcomer, and therefore people have less load or baggage with it when using a new technology and access to new technology. Having said that, though, Mr. Cui, data protection and the international rules regarding data, rather than national rules of data, applying it to everybody else in the world, is some of the important topics to be discussed. The G20 touch on certain part of it, but very small of it.
Yes, I think yes, it would be I mean, very big potential area for China and Germany. We can have some more cooperation. It's also the I mean, the main target for this cooperation between China and Germany on this Made in China 2025, and also the industry 4.0 vision. But now the problem is maybe we can try to transfer the reliable to another word, is how could China and Germany, we can find a new approach to deal with maybe a new cooperation on the basis of yes, we need to continue our cooperation, but at the same time, we need to take a serious regarding about how about the potential competitiveness between us. Even for this data industry or some other maybe new economy, I think we need to take a very clear understanding about the situation. So on this side, that on the basis, I hope that yes, we do have maybe a stronger and stronger cooperation. But of course, we need to have a very clear mindset.
The realities.
Yes.
Be pragmatic, Mr. Siren.
Yes, that's to be pragmatic. That's a very important point, and I do agree. I do agree to your point that we need to talk more to each other. It sounds very simple, but it is very important, because there are still a lot of misunderstandings. Because we don't know so much about China, that this huge country with lots of people is governed in a different way, and probably Chinese don't know so much about our country, about our problems in Europe, about our role in the Western Hemisphere. All very complicated
We
things.
hope discussions like this could at least help just a little bit. And we are going to talk about Germany and the current stage of Europe right after this break. Stay with us, the two of you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us. Stay with us on World Insight. Still to come on the program. Germany's ruling CDU party picked Merkel's successor. How will Europe reach to a Germany in transition? Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you Monday to Friday on CGTN. For the past 18 years, Angela Merkel has been the head of her country's strongest conservative party, the Christian Democrats Union. But her tenure is coming to an end. On October the 29th this year, after her party suffered severe losses in key regional elections, Merkel announced that she would not seek re-election. She will now step down as chancellor at the end of her term in 2021. On Friday, her party will elect her successor. Recent polls show the contest to be between Karen Bauer, whom some see as a continuation of Merkel, and Merz, a former political rival of Merkel. Whoever her party chooses, the person will shape the future of the party and the country. So for more on the new chairman of Germany's ruling party, with us in our Beijing studio once again, Cui Hongjian and also Frank Sheeran. Meanwhile, we are joined in Berlin by Dr. Günther Surfert, who is a senior fellow with the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. I hope I pronounced your name at least 90% correct, sir. But let me begin by asking you the latest result of the contenders coming from the CDU party. What would that mean for Germany's choice when it comes to policies toward China and policies and leadership within the EU, sir?
I can't imagine. You have pronounced my name very, very perfectly, very correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
No, I can't imagine a particular change in policy towards China. I think that if there is any change, it would more be naturally towards the European Union and the role Germany is playing in the European Union. Because we see the favorite of Chancellor Merkel, Mrs. Kramp-Karrenbauer, seems to be more a moderate person, more able to build bridges, and this is of particular importance in a situation in Europe where there are so many conflicts to be handled with at one and the same time, whereas the other both candidates are more of a confrontative style, and therefore I think this would play more, make more a difference than relations with China.
I see. Mr. Sheeran, I still remember very clearly the time when we were there in Germany covering the general election, and Mrs. Merkel did not have a very happy face at the end of it last year, and things have changed so much since then also. Having said that, though, what would that mean, as Mr. Surfert put it, for Germany's search for its right role within the EU?
Yeah, it's very important to have a strong leader in Germany, which is at the same time, or could be at the same time, a strong leader in Europe. But now, as my colleague was saying, we first need to wait for the results on Sunday, and then it's all about inner politics. Things need to be arranged and everything, and then the next step will be Europe. One thing is clear: Angela Merkel will be weaker after this Sunday elections, because she will not running the party anymore. It will be for her more complicated, even in Europe, to succeed. That's clear.
Will she become a lame duck in a way?
In a way, she is a lame duck already. It depends on who is winning. If Ms. Karrenbauer is winning, then it's probably a bit easier. If Friedrich Merz is winning, then it will be much more complicated. We need to see and to wait. But there is a lack of leadership in Europe, that's clear, and it will not be easier with Chancellor Merkel fading.
Right. Well, what exactly are the two candidates having in mind when it comes to their schedule for the country and also for Germany's role in Europe? Karrenbauer, for example, has backed Chancellor Merkel on immigration. She is generally seen as a socially conservative, opposing same-sex marriage and abortion while being economically liberal. She would likely gain support from voters who defected to the Greens. Merz, however, on the other side, is considered a pro-business conservative on the right of the CDU. He questions the right to asylum by refugees. He would likely gain support from voters who defected to the right-wing AfD party. So you see some difference over there already, quite between the two contenders. We're going to know the result very soon. Having said that, though, that's going to be internal politics inside Germany. Of course, China is not going to have any, what China say, interference with others' internal affairs. But China does look at the latest development in Germany very closely, because we are talking about some ultimate cooperation with German side.
Yes, exactly. I think China should keep a very close concern about what's the change, especially politically in Germany. Just like we mentioned before, that we need to know if Germany is a very reliable partner for us. I think part of the reliable Germany would be the political stability and also the consistency of the policy. But now, yes, I think that even for every, contenders this time, even for Mrs. Karrenbauer, if she win, because he is regarded as the copy of Chancellor Merkel, even a mini Merkel. But even for her, I don't think there will be a big problem, question mark, with the continuation of Chancellor Merkel's policy.
Right. Having said that, though, it is really Germany's role inside the EU that everybody else is watching about the latest development in Germany. And Mr. Surford, on that, I want to come back to you. You see, France, at least French President Macron was quite ambitious earlier, but with the latest setback, with the so-called yellow vest issue, he certainly has to clear up his house before going further to play a role inside the EU. Though Germany was a little bit weaker as a result of Merkel's weakening in the party, but now there seems to be a possibility that Germany could pick itself up again within the EU, or is it?
I don't agree much with your analysis. I think Germany missed a big chance. Missed a big chance in not supporting Mr. Macron enough in its pro-European initiatives, because what we see in France now is very similar to what we see in other countries. It's a very, excuse the term, it's a very selfish and egoistic move for not being in a way taxed for economical reasons or for environmental reasons, and everybody is only dealing with its own interests. And what Macron suggested was a more broader perspective to put the interests of a common Europe into the forefront, and Germany should have taken this chance and to agree more on the financial suggestions of building a Eurozone budget, of being able to share more its wealth with other European partners, and to underline that Europe is again a partner or an actor that can deal with the economic and political problems. And I think is particular the fact that Macron was not able really to count a real success in its European policy that aggravated also its image at home. And I think therefore it will be much more difficult for Germany, who is very much reliant on a common European policy, to build a common European policy with a President Macron, which is now weakened due to domestic developments.
Mr. Sheeran, for example, Brexit. That, of course, has
news,
not... well, listen to me. At the current stage, there seems to be some temporary consensus reached within the British side, and yet, of course, that plan still needs to be approved by the Parliament. That's going to be the difficult part. Having said that, though, there is somewhat a temporary result. Will that be able to let the EU pick up a little bit from the earlier chaos, and as a result clear up its mind as to what could be some of the priorities and give Germany a chance?
The problem is it's too early to speak of good news. This is a very, very weak situation, and we don't really know the outcome.
It's very fluid. It could go any direction.
Yes. And especially in UK itself, the political situation is very unstable. It can change every day. So therefore, we can't say anything reliable right now about the European future. We know what we would need. We would need to be unified. We need to speak with one voice. We need to stick together. But
according to the German.
Not only according to the Germans, there are many other countries which see the necessity that we speak with one voice, to be internationally reliable, to have a strong voice internationally. But right now with the Brexit, it's very, very difficult to predict. It's very difficult to predict what's going to happen to Macron.
Right.
Very difficult to predict what's happening in Italy and in Germany. About Germany, we did talk about already.
as a result, Mr. Surford, how attractive is Germany now, do you think, in the eyes of the other outside Europe? For example, in the eyes of China? I don't know. I want to have your opinion.
I think in the last years we saw in a way a hype that Germany would, due to its economic strength, would be able to play the role of a leader in Europe. And we see, for example, that some think tanks who had their centers in other European cities now moved to Germany. And I think this was really a little bit an unfounded hype, because Germany has a very strong economic potential, but I think the German leadership was not ready and not willing to play really a leadership role in Europe. And we see, when we look at the past 10 years, we see that the European Union was split 2 times politically. Yes. In the Euro crisis, there was a split between the North and the South, and Angela Merkel tried to manage this. And then in the migration crisis, we saw a split between the East and the West of the European member states. And therefore now Europe is sitting on these 2 different fault lines, which are very, very difficult to manage. And now we have on the top of it Brexit and Mrs. Merkel, as it was said before, as a lame duck. And I think therefore the hype of Germany as a leader of Europe is has not realized. But there is also no other one around, and therefore I think Europe is really in a deep crisis.
How attractive is Germany in the eyes of the Chinese, Mr. Cui?
Yes, I think that still, I think that because Germany is still biggest economy in Europe, and also now Germany should, I mean, more powerful in political or some other field in Europe. I think in the past we can find out Germany was regarded by China as a main partner in Europe, not only in economic trade and also in political and security even. Right. But now I think the issue for China, Germany, and how about the image, how about the future of Germany in the eyes of China is now, I think, especially recent years, because of immigration issue, because of issue of Eurozone reform. Now it looks like Germany become more inwards in policy. Germany take care more about the whole interest in the name of a European Union. And at the same time, there will be some problem on the identities between the Germany as a nation state, as a single economy, as a very important partner with China, and also at the same time, Germany as a leader of the Eurozone and the European Union to deal with its relations with China.
That's exactly what I want to ask back to Mr. Surford, because Mr. Surford, already earlier your colleague have some say about this, but now it's your turn, I think, Mr. Surford. For example, the latest China-U.S. apparent trade war going on with a 3-month suspension, but there is so much uncertainty over there, and therefore, with this uncertainty, how will Germany look at its right selection of approach towards China, and also toward the United States, which is likely to impose some of the tariffs on German manufacturers? We don't know. Everything is fluid. So how will Germany be able to carefully tit its road ahead?
Yeah, naturally, I think Germany is between a rock and a hard place, but I think this is also the fundament for a very rational and moderate policy Germany has to conduct, because Germany is, due to the developments after Second World War, due to its NATO membership, due to its dependency on a huge American market, naturally is in a way, it is dependent on the US, on good relations on the US. On the other hand, China is now the market of the future, and almost with equal trade shares of Germany with China and with the US. And therefore, Germany is not in the position, I think, to see a black and white picture and to take either the side of the Trump administration or the side of China. Germany has, due to its own interest, to be a good moderator and a reliable partner that is able to build bridges. And I think there are not many countries around who are in a similar position and who can fulfill this role. And therefore, I see a very important task for Germany in that way.
Can we expect anything coming out of this visit by the German president to China? Mr. Cui, briefly.
Yes, I think that
it
will be very necessary at this moment for this visit. I think it will keep a high level of communication between two countries.
Okay, Mr. Siri?
For example, there will be some progress in shaping the WTO. There we have both very strong interest to keep the WTO in place, make it more efficient.
That's already quite a big thing over there. And Mr. Surfert, finally, last but not least. Mr. Surfert.
Yes, I'm looking very much forward to yes, I'm looking very much forward to this visit. I think the president is maybe the best equipped German politician to create this atmosphere of reliability and trust, and to make sure that despite all the changes in German policy, the relations will continue on the natural basis.
We know that the current president used to serve in the Schroeder administration. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Cui Hongjian, Frank Siren, and Günther Surfert. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And that is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Inside CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Inside team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Have a great weekend, everyone.